Welcome to this week's episode, and as you well know, I'm Chris from Harrison's, and today I have Amber with me.
Hello.
Bit of background. Amber has now been with me 3 years, unfortunately or fortunately, whichever way you see it. And just giving you a little bit of background about Amber. Amber's one of those people that will literally do anything for anybody else. She doesn't always necessarily think about herself. It's always a case of she puts the clients first, people first, team. Very loyal. And I'm very grateful for her being in the team. So that just gives you a rough idea of what Amber's like. I could probably talk this whole podcast about her, but I'm not going to do that today. So, one of Amber's main roles within the business is purely being the sales progression side of things. So once the sales agreed, through to exchange of contracts. So, Amber, what's the number one thing that slows a file down for no logical reason?
Communication. Everybody's working to the same goal.
Yep.
To get them moved. To get them their dream place or a change of situation, whatever it is they need. You need communication with the client, the seller or the buyer. You need it with the solicitor, mortgage advisor to know when the mortgage offer is in, and then through other agents as well if there's a chain.
Yeah. And I think, as I said, when you're looking at it, I think communication is key in every aspect of anything that we do.
100%.
And I think if you look at some agencies, it's sometimes very difficult, isn't it, to get updates and certain things. What do you reckon that the issues are around that? Why do you think it's so much of a problem?
I don't know if it's understanding on some part. Obviously, there are a lot of sales progressors that have been doing it years and years. There's people that bring in companies. Sometimes that can be a little bit harder to communicate with.
Yep.
But sometimes I do think it's understanding on certain little bits and not knowing that that could then potentially lead to an issue later on down the line.
I think one of the issues that I've had, if I go back in probably about a year or so ago when I was getting involved, is I remember having a conversation with somebody and she'd only been in the role 2 months, and it was after, as I was asking a couple of questions, she said, "I've got no idea what you're talking about." And I went, "Are you looking after this file?" And she was like, "Oh, well, yeah, I am." I went, "Do you know what you're doing?" She went, "No, I've just been thrown into the deep end." So what made me laugh is ultimately I was then guiding her on what to do. So I think this is a key issue. And it's always an ongoing conversation at various events, the estate agents versus conveyancers. But I think estate agents have a lot to live up to, because I think there's too many inexperienced people that are actually dealing with that after sale process.
Yeah, I just had a thought as well on that. Joining this one, and the first question you asked is also don't set expectations that can't be met. So before Christmas, I had a chain with another estate agent, and she said, "Oh, my client asked if this can be done before Christmas," and I said it's a possibility, and I emailed her back and I was just like, don't. There's no point telling your client there's a possibility, because this is not going to happen. You need to set the expectations now.
That's a really fantastic point, actually, because I've got a client now that is a very loyal client, and he'll use me for everything he does. And going back to 2020, I remember him knocking on the door, and he was getting a bit stressed because obviously his agent, and going back to, we'd just come out of COVID and the deal was agreed in July, and the actual agent said, "Oh yeah, you'll be in by September." And obviously this was at a time where mortgage offers were taking something like 12, 16 weeks to come out. That was just the mortgage offers. So that was September, then it was October, then it was November, and he come in early December. And he was knocking on the door at the point where obviously we couldn't let him in. And he was saying, "Oh, I'm expecting to complete before Christmas. It needs to happen." And I was like, absolutely no chance. I went, "You'll probably be lucky to move in January." But I said, I'm anticipating January. He went, "Well, I need it done by Christmas." And I was like, "It's not happening." And he just looked at me and I said, what's the reasons? And I won't use a few words that he used, because you can understand. And he was saying, "Well, my agent told me we're going to be completed by September." And I went, "I've got absolutely no idea why he would have said that." And he was saying, "Well, they told me you were telling them that." And I went, "Absolutely no chance. Why would I tell them that?" I said, "I've just said to you just now," I said, "You're not even moving before Christmas." He said, "Well, I need it done." I went, "You're not moving." I went, "There's nothing I can physically do to get this through." And I think this is sometimes, or the majority of the time, is having that honest conversation and telling people probably what they don't want to hear. And I think this is where agents lack. And then the default is, "Oh, it's them, not me." Yeah. So, yeah, good point.
TTF. Tell the total truth faster.
Yay, nice. What behaviour from a buyer or seller instantly tells you this is going to be painful.
I think struggling to get hold of them,
Mm-hmm.
if that's when you're calling back about an offer.
Yep.
Sometimes just a straight up behaviour when you are doing the offer. Like,
Yep.
if you tell them it's accepted and they're like, okay. Most people are genuinely happy
Yep.
when they get offers accepted. I understand not everyone knows everything about the situation. Some people are first-time buyers, they need help and everything like that. But too many questions surrounding, like, so if I want to pull out, can I do this, 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 and this?
Yep.
Just a few red flags, we'll
Yep.
say, that pop up.
And this, we're going to cover this a little bit later on as well, and this is why it is so important reservation agreements are enforced, but we'll touch base on that in a minute. I think one of the other things as well is when you come in and it's demanded, I need to be done by X.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes can be a bit of a red flag that this person is just going to be driving it. And again, this could fall on us as well, is the education point around how long it's going to take.
Yeah.
And how many times do you hear it's I need to be done by in 4 weeks, but then they go and use a solicitor that's the cheapest out there that are only working on workload. They're working on a numbers game. That for me would be an indicator that these are going to be a nightmare. Is they want their cake and sort of eat it.
Yeah.
Like, they want it really fast, but then they want to pay pittance.
Yeah, definitely.
What's something you repeat every week that nobody listens to?
I can't give you a date of when this is going to complete because the offer was accepted 2 weeks ago.
So again, that sort of ties in with the last one. Or when I used to be in it more so, is I'll give you an update next week. Don't call me beforehand because nothing would have happened.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the week, they're calling you, say, is there an update?
Yes.
I haven't got one yet. I think sometimes, again, going back to it, is maybe past experience with some people is they're not regularly getting updates, so they feel they have to chase, or I'll give you an update once I've got one, and then an hour later they'll give you a call, have you got an update?
Yeah.
What's the most underestimated part of sales progression?
In a good way or a bad way?
Let's go both. What one are you going with? I'm guessing bad way.
I was actually going to go for a good one, but I'll start with bad. Bad would be, I don't know if it's the right word, therapy. I become the therapist.
Yeah, I think half the time we're not estate agents, are we?
No.
And we're more punching bags.
Yes.
Yeah, I quite agree, yeah.
And good is when, say if something was probably going to fall through and then you manage to get it back together, or just the overall excitement for people, just the happiness of when everything finally gets to go through to the exchange part. It's a relief off everybody's shoulders. They don't have to deal with it anymore. It's just nice to see that.
And I think as I always used to get the feeling of this is like once it goes through, I always used to believe I was the only one that was going to be able to do it. So when you're actually then saying, it's exchange, and you can hear the delight, or more so, it's not the delight, it's more the relief. Yeah, exactly. When you pick up a new file, what's the first thing you look for?
The chain.
The chain. Yep. And what's your reasoning behind that?
Knowing what's in the chain can help set expectations. If there's a leasehold, it's likely going to take an extra 6 to 8 weeks. Getting an understanding of everything. If you've got a probate at the top, is a probate granted? If it's not granted, again, that could take another 12 weeks.
Yep.
Just the full understanding of everything within it, knowing who's in it and everything like that can help set expectations, know who to contact, where the possible problems are, that sort of thing.
I think also as well, it's a good point actually, because again, this is another thing that I feel that is another issue is the bottom of the chain, and how many times have we dealt with somebody that's doing a let to buy, and obviously your and my understanding of that is on a let to buy generally in probably 90% of deals they have to then exchange and complete on the same day.
Oh, yeah.
So having that information, but the amount of times that agents, and again, it goes back to probably inexperienced agents dealing with certain situations like that where they're not going to know.
Or the first-time buyer being in rented.
Yeah.
I've had one that had a 3-month notice period and nobody knew. Yeah.
So you're getting close to exchange of contracts and everyone thinks they're going to be moving within 2 weeks, and then the bombshell is, by the way, 3 months. So I think it's a massive point, actually. It's a great point you've made, because we need to know that.
Exactly, yeah.
And again, it all goes back to communication, doesn't it? So actually understanding what everyone's time frame is.
Yeah, we asked, even when we register people before they go and even see a property, we always ask if they're in rented, how long is your notice period? So we have that on file. The amount of agents I've called and said, is your first time buyer living with parents or in rented? I don't know.
Yeah.
we need to know.
Where do most change generally fall apart?
Controversial answer.
Oh, go on then.
Ego.
Yeah, I don't think it's controversial at all. I think it's to the point. But again, is it necessarily ego? Or is it emotion?
A bit of both. A bit of, some people don't like to not get their own way.
Yep.
But at the same time, it is the emotion of like, everybody wants it all done. And again, like I said earlier, we're all working to the same thing. But some people just like it to go their way.
And another reason why reservation agreements are so powerful. But we'll talk about that later. But yeah, so I suppose, and it also as well, it's like the amount of conversations I've had, especially on a reservation agreement, where people come back and said, oh, I'm going to pull out if it doesn't get done by next week. Okay, that's fine, but you're going to have to pay our seller £2,000. And it just suddenly then becomes more logical than it is emotional. So I think that avoids it. But I think for me, it's, well, if I go and tell the agent that I'm going to be moving next week, and I think sometimes when you come and bring emotion into it, and it's up there in the top 3, I still think it's probably the most stressful thing, based on my experiences and conversations that we've had with people, it is stressful.
It really is.
But again, it's been like that for 20 odd years, and it's probably not going to change for another 20 odd years.
I was speaking to somebody, one of our sellers the other day, and they were handing the keys into me, and they said last time we moved was back in like the 80s or something.
Yeah.
He said, I had my keys within 2 weeks.
Yeah.
He was like, I don't understand why it's just got longer and longer and longer.
I think I've talked about this a couple of times now. I can't understand it because, again, going back to 2004, it is more difficult now, yet we've got more technology now than ever. Everything, majority of everything is online, yet the process is now taking longer. I just don't understand it, but I do. But anyhow, what's the moment where you think this deal is on me to save?
Either price negotiations or dates. You get a lot of, well, I can't do that date, so if you're not going to do my date, then I'm going to pull out.
Yeah.
That's most of the time, 99.9% of the time, not going to happen.
So this sort of then goes back to your ego point, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But most of the time, like if it's not my client, but it's somebody else's client, and I don't know, they've got a rental, they can't physically afford the mortgage payment and the rental within the same month, then I will have a conversation with my client and say, I understand, but think about this person. They're going to have to pay over probably $2,500, roughly, for like a first-time buyer in 1 month.
Yep.
They don't have that. They're probably 22, 23, around that age. That's just not, it's not going to happen for them. So just think about that. Can you give them an extra 2 days?
Yeah.
And maybe that'll work. But obviously, if it's my client, I will push for my client to get what they need.
Yeah. I think it's. I think that this would simplify the whole system so much that if you can be flexible, maybe it is having that conversation at the very beginning. Maybe that's something that we do need to bring in and highlighting the flexibility. I probably don't think it's going to have an impact, but at least having that sort of flexibility, personally for me, would help. Do you have anything else to add on that? Deals on me to save.
Just as well, if there's a chain again, other agents or the solicitors around or the mortgage advisor or something like that, if they aren't getting, like the agents aren't getting the updates from their solicitors, I will get the solicitor details from them for their client and I will call them up.
Yeah.